sleepy. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is 8 p.m. Eastern on a Friday, and what that means is it is time for TGI. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us this week. TGI, by the way, stands for the Greatest Indoor Reading Series. We have been consistently meeting here Fridays at 8 o'clock to hear poetry, prose, essays, nonfiction, and we've had several visual artists as well through screen sharing since the last week of March 2020. My name is Ridge Creswell. If you don't know me, hello, that's fine. I don't expect you to. And we have a wonderful show tonight. Tonight, the show is based around an anthology that's coming out, or is available currently, yes. And I will get to that in one moment. But really quickly first, I was thinking about something on the way home. A lot of things happened this week. Not two things, but two things happened this week that in my head were connected, and not exactly, but a little. And I want to just say something about this really quickly. One is, and this is not in any way to rejoice in anyone's demise or suffering. One is that Rush Limbaugh died. I'm fine with people applauding it. I'm not trying to necessarily rejoice in it myself, although I'll say I was never a fan. And the reason I got thinking about this was this. He came along at a time in the 1980s when radio stations got into this shock jock thing, right? There were a few of them, but he was the one who brought this what will they say next outrageous, publicity-seeking, offense-seeking, hate-mongering vibe to politics. Fast forward 35, 40 years, and we're here now. The brand of entertainment that he was part of creating has now supplanted the news media in America. That is the news media in America. The news is based on getting your eyeballs to stick to it, and you'll never turn away. Now, not only has this led to an increase in polarization, but it's led to the politicization of everything. Everything. From sports teams to, and I don't just mean sports teams that were named racial slurs, which were finally addressed. I mean, if you're a fan of this, I don't like it. If you're a fan of that, people's opinions have gotten more and more extreme because it's all based on drawing outrage and hatred. So what on earth does this have to do with anything else that happened this week? This week, and I did not see a single news story about it. I didn't look very hard, I'll be honest. This week, America quietly sailed across the mark of 500,000 people dead from coronavirus. And that's 500,000 confirmed. I did not see this reported on. I didn't see it mentioned. I didn't see anything about it, but I found it shocking. I personally don't know what 500,000 of anything looks like. I almost can't fit that number in my head. And a large part of the reason for that is that because of the way the media works now, there was no single truth about it. And because of disagreements over it, and because of who was unfortunately at the time in charge, people did not wear masks. People did not stay away from each other. People did not do the very basic things they needed to do to stay safe. So the antidote to this is going to be a daily grind for the rest of our natural lives. But I think it starts with trying to focus on media and entertainment, for lack of a better word, that instead of dividing people and instead of promoting rage, connects people. And I really hope we can do that. I guess that's all, that's where, if I can, even if it's not worth remarking on when I do die, even if I am not worth remarking on, if there's anyone in my life who's like, he was like the opposite of Rush Limbaugh, I'll be happy. for a lot of reasons. Anyway, I don't really know how to get out of this speech that I've started making. So I am going to say, stay tuned. We're going to hopefully, do more and more of these. Obviously, we'll do it every week. We may have some other things coming. We got t-shirts. We're talking about t-shirts. It's very goofy. And if you or someone you really care about, or someone you knows someone they care about has died from coronavirus, I'm really sorry. And I wish I could express the disappointment that I have in many of my fellow human beings in a productive way. But all we can do for now is, as we were talking about before the show actually started, you can wear masks, you can stay away from people, you can, I don't know, whatever you can do. All right. With that said, I think we have something tonight that is, in a way, about combating hateful and problematic narratives that tend to run through entertainment and the media. And we have some individuals here who represent artists who are attempting to change people's minds, which I think is valuable, rather than continuing to hammer on the fear and disgust and all those easy things to make money. These are people who are really trying to connect people and make people understand what other people are going through and what other people are dealing with. So with that, I think we should just get started. Thank you all for entertaining me, humoring me there. I will pass things off in a moment. I just wanted to say that this is a show about sort of writers featured in the anthology Big, Stories About Life in Plus-Sized Bodies. And for this, to introduce the collection, I would like to introduce the editor of the collection, Christina Myers. So Christina, if you'd like to unmute and say a few words, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Oh, here, I think I should have asked you to unmute now.
There we go. Now I can do it. Hi, thank you very much for the lovely introduction and for having us. And I'll just say, I think you're totally right. I think the only solution to all of those things that you're talking about is for people to have the opportunity to look into lives that are very different than their own. If we only read things that were identical to our own lived experiences, we would never have any capacity for change or engagement with other people at all. And for me, that's a little bit what this book is about. So I'll just hold it up. I think it's so pretty. I always have to comment on the design of it. It is available right now. You were asking if it had just come out. No, we actually just marked our 1-year anniversary from our launch. So actually this week is our birthday week. So this is sort of really quite a treat to be here. We obviously had a very different year than we were expecting for launch. We launched a book, we held one event, and one by one, everything got canceled after that. The upside to the silver lining to all of that and to this year is that we never would have been in this place with all of these people had the last year sort of not happened. So we feel really lucky for that. So thank you for having us. It's a perfect week for us to be here. We're really excited. As you said, I think you'll indulge me for a few minutes so I can introduce a few things and then we'll get to the readers. That's what it's really about. One of the things I like to say when I'm talking about this book, and apologies for anybody who's heard me talk about this book a few times, you're going to get a repeat. When it was being put together and it was sort of being talked about by writers I knew and people I knew in my writing community, one of the things that came up over and over again was people saying, it's so great that you're doing a book about body positivity. Well, we really need a book about body positivity. And it's really important for me that people understand it's not a book about body positivity. Are there stories in it that have that as a theme? Absolutely. Are there also stories where people are grappling with their body image? Absolutely. Are there stories where people are like, I'm not grappling with this at all. I'm good with my body and I'm going to celebrate body neutrality. There's a sort of a spectrum of responses to bodies in general. So it's really not at all about body positivity. And it's really, going back to what we opened on, it's really just a book that's an opportunity to look into sort of the window of other people's lives. And to me, that's what I think actually makes it great. And I don't mean that as a reflection on me. I mean that as a reflection on the writers that are in it, it's great because it's an opportunity to get 10 or 15 or 20, or in this case, 26. There's 26 essays in the book. 26 different views. It's like looking out 26 different windows at 26 different landscapes. And some of them don't agree with each other. I'm sure there are writers who got this book, read somebody else's story and went, oh, that's not my take on this at all. And probably really didn't agree with each other. And that's what I hope for the readers, because, I want you to be able to open the book and see something that's very familiar. And you go, wow, I really resonate with that. Somebody else has experienced that. They get it. And then I want you to read something that is completely unlike any of your own life experiences, because again, that's the only way anything changes, is to understand different life experiences. So that's sort of my intro. As I said, the book is 26 essays. The writers many of them are Canadian. I'm Canadian, the publisher's Canadian. So of course there was sort of a bulk from Canada. We have a couple of American writers as well, and one from the UK. And you're going to hear from a few of them tonight. Two from Canada, one originally rooted in the US and one who is also in the US. And that's another really great sort of exciting thing, is that there's not a chance in real life that the four of us who are reading here tonight would have ever been in the same room, from Toronto, Vancouver, New Orleans, and now we get to be sort of virtually. So again, thank you for that. And I hope everybody enjoys the wonderful readings. I know I've read these stories a million times and I still enjoy them. So I hope you guys all enjoy them too. So.
All right, Christina, thank you for that introduction. I think that sounds, I think it sounds great, and I'm very excited. And all I will say is that I love the idea that it is not a monolithic opinion on people's relationships with their bodies. So I'm very curious to hear more. And so with that, I see no reason not to just begin. So our first reader tonight is Rabbit Richards. They were born on occupied Lenape territory in Brooklyn, New York. Their family has never rooted for more than one generation anywhere for as long as their history can trace. Their father's family claims Kyiv and Minsk. Their mother's family remembers St. Thomas and St. Croix, islands of the Carib, Arawak, and Ciboney. Rabbit is learning how to exist on stolen land in a marginalized body. Relentlessly compassionate with fierce integrity, Rabbit is passionate about anti-oppression and accessibility work and is deeply invested in the conversations that are provoked by their art. With that, Rabbit, you should be able to unmute, and you can take us away.
Okay. This story is named Precipitation. I'm walking up Main from Alexander to the SkyTrain station to go stare at the water behind Science World. The tops of the mountains are cloaked in fog. The seagulls are bleating like goats, fighting over bits of bread cast from upper-story windows. The air is warm, but the rain is cold, and the dissonance makes me want blankets and tea, but at least when it rains, you don't smell as much of what's being washed away. I don't romanticize petrichor the way I see other poets do, although it is a good smell. It's just that in the downtown east side, rain is more cover noise and garden hose, less idyllic concept. I'm new to Squamish and still haven't figured out appropriate rain gear. Mostly, I wear soft hoodies, let them get soaked through, and have several stages of drying clothes hanging on a line in my apartment. I've had one raincoat in my life that I loved, and it was when I was about 6 years old. It was reversible. A lavender slicker on one side, and the textured side featuring the signature floral print from Bonwit Teller. I wore it until it was so small on me that it pinched the flesh on the insides of my armpits, even in the summer with just a thin cotton shirt underneath. The hood was big enough for my fluffy hair, and I felt like fashion in it because it came from the same store Katharine Hepburn shopped at in Dusk Set. Never mind that the store had lost a lot of its glamour between Breakfast at Tiffany's in the 1980s. Donald Trump had that effect on many things in my city, and Fifth Avenue and 56th Street was a place my mother took me to get coffee for her and to disappear in racks of luxurious leather goods and diaphanous scarves that cost the same as our car for me. She was always careful to tell me to use the good bathrooms, but make eye contact with no one unless it was direct. If I ever saw the Donald in the hallways, I was to make myself invisible and come straight back to her. Thinking about that raincoat always makes me feel like I've grown too big for my bones. Last year, I bought a winter coat from Torrid, mail order from the States. I was shocked at its quality because clothes my size are almost always flimsy and poorly constructed. The buttons keep falling off, but in this economy, who expected otherwise? I did have one good coat when I was living in Kelowna a decade ago, but at the time I had much different supports, and my body, while still considered plus-sized, fit in the largest size they made at Clio. I told everyone it was the first coat I ever had that made me feel feminine, but it was also the first coat I ever had that fit, at least since that little lavender raincoat. And it made me feel invisible in good ways, like I could blend in. I didn't cut the size tag off, as I often do, so that when the coat is hanging on a hook anonymously, I don't have to hear skinny people tittering about how stressful it would be if they ever owned anything with that many X's on it. People jostle for place at Main and Hastings, and I'm keenly aware of how much space I need to slip between people who are standing mostly still, but who also weave unexpectedly through the streets. I get stopped a lot because I wear my hair in brightly colored box braids. I don't always love the attention, but it does mitigate some of the ways people look at me. I can see the irritation on their faces before they switch to some variation of, "Oh my God, your hair is amazing." And to be honest, it's not the worst way I've distracted people from being annoyed at my physical presence. When I grew from a sickly child to an unhealthy teen, my body changed from boyish to mannish, with the sole exception of enormous breasts. I was using she, her pronouns then, and no one in my life had been made to question this. Being seen as an object of desire in a game that wasn't just about power was very disconcerting to me, but I also really liked being seen as feminine. It's a tricky line, being the biggest girl on the gymnastics team. Being big and strong was like stealing attributes from someone else's character sheet. Being stared at from my chest seemed like a dangerous way to finally be seen as something other than the sick, weird kid in the corner. Being became difficult in a new way. I've seen a photo of myself at age 14, all elbows and knees and a plastified smile. I remember feeling fat the day the picture was taken. I remember feeling fat always. I don't know where the photo had been buried, but when I pulled it out of my mother's bureau drawer, tears came immediately. I was so thin you could see the shapes of my long bones. I had a swollen belly because my digestion was so messed up. I could look at the face of that child and know it was me, even as I remembered that the morning of that day I had wanted to choose different clothes and my mother had overruled me. I remembered wanting simultaneously to disappear and to be a star, to be seen and to be left alone. It rained that day too. I think I wore a t-shirt and pretended I didn't care. There was a long succession of hand-me-down jackets and outerwear, most of which came from the men in my family. I have broad shoulders, which I am told helps me look more balanced, but that means none of the women in my family have clothes I can borrow. I know there is no way I am the only non-binary person in my family, but I'm the only one I know of, not so much invisible as hypervisible, like everywhere else. In college, I wore anything I could afford from the men's section of Old Navy or H&M. I was lucky enough to live in Brooklyn near Kings Plaza Mall, one of the few that housed plus-size sections in the department stores and where I could actually try clothes on instead of waiting for them to arrive in the mail. People complimented my style, but what they mostly meant was that I was doing a good job of fitting sideways into compartments not meant for me. They put a community garden under the Jordan Viaduct. On wet days, it smells of mulch and weeds. I've seen the occasional squash leaf in there, but usually the boxes of earth look empty and sad. I think a lot about planting there, but would I trust to eat the food that came from it? And isn't the lack of green both vegetables and spaces carefully planned out? The cars speed through that section of Main Street, and it's a dangerous intersection for pedestrians. My understanding is that the only reason the viaduct isn't further north is down to community organizing in Chinatown. Vancouver decided to erase the Black neighborhood instead. If you know who to ask or how to see it, there are bits and pieces of history everywhere. There's someone in the garden today. It's hard to tell if it's someone who's there to garden or someone who's there to touch soil for a moment or someone who's there because there aren't a lot of places to be that feel like you shouldn't be there at all. I don't bother taking a bus up the Main Street Science World. It's always crowded in the stretch up this station, and I need to sit down, but I don't look disabled. I'd rather walk and be wet and tired than explain that while I don't seem frail or like I might waste away, I am fragile and need care. Fat people aren't afforded care. Fat people are judged morally for existing in our bodies and then snubbed because our relative health is our own responsibility and has nothing to do with consumer capitalism or childhood soaked in stress hormones. Fat Black people are supposed to know their place and disappear. Fat neurodivergent people are in the way. Fat Jewish people don't exist. I'm aware of the ways oppression intersects over my head and creates a grid of lasers I don't fit in. I can walk instead. Lucky me. Today. On days when I'm not able to walk, I get to face drivers who look at me disappointedly or refuse outright when I ask for the bus to kneel. Under the station, I dip around the corner to the Thames. Like my mom, I prefer my coffee piping hot, preferably black. She taught me to order a larger sized coffee than I actually want to drink so it stays hot in the cup longer. But now I order coffee in front of thin, white hipster women, and I wonder if my mother was aware of the size of her hips when she ordered hers. I wonder if saying extra large will ever feel less like pulling a spotlight directly over my own head. I wait in front of the pick up here sign and try to shake some of the water from my hood without making too much of a mess. Dipping out from under the station, I make my way through holes in the commuter crowd. I never actually touch anyone else, but people react to my passing as if they need to check themselves for damage. I don't look back, but I hear people make comments behind my back. A lot of assumptions get made about where fat comes from, about how a fat person got that way, or why they're out in public where the thin can see them and are in some way forced to interact. I prefer the way the rain invades my personal space. It's not consensual either, but it isn't singling me out for special notice. I dodge the weird statues of people at cafe tables in front of the Science World Plaza, sit on a bench, stare out at the water, and across it, to the homes of people who can afford a waterfront view in the middle of a housing crisis. Sip my coffee and let the rainwater from the lid dilute it in my mouth. The sun has glared between cracks in the clouds until the fog has burned off, and the rain makes a steady sort of soft curtain. By the time I get home, my hoodie will be twice its own weight. I'll hang it on the line in the living room and switch to the next one and try not to see this process as metaphorical. Thank you.
All right, Rabbit, thank you so much. That was really, I really enjoyed how we'd spoken, both I and Christina had spoken right before about getting into other people's heads, and I really enjoyed how much of your sort of thought process and almost associations, like memories that pop up and these other things that sort of come through. And I think the thing that I thought was really interesting, not interesting might not be the best word, telling, because I hadn't really exactly thought of it this way, was this idea that as you go about your business and your life, this idea that people, notice, it's not disgust or judgment or anything, it's like annoyance or being inconvenienced by your presence. And I think that is kind of what makes some interactions with strangers so difficult, is that it's not anything other than the basic dehumanization of you becoming an obstacle instead of a human being. And I think that was just really well articulated, as well as all of the thoughts and feelings and back and forth and struggles that come with just relating to our own physical selves, and the clothing and the marketing and the everything. I know this is something that I've had some experience with as well, just being I'm a fairly large dude, and and when I was a kid, it was always, um, yeah, the sense of there didn't need to be anything said. It was on people's faces, and then they covered it up. And the way I dealt with it when I was a kid was I became as scary as possible to teenagers when I was a teenager. That was my route. So I would go to high school in my leather jacket and Cannibal Corpse t-shirt and, and just try to freak them out. But I think it's so interesting to also see the way that in your current life, in that walk, in the rain, you have been able to, despite the presence of other people, despite the judgment or looks or annoyance or whatever's coming out of them, to take the moment to enjoy your coffee and to just be there. So I think that's really inspiring. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing that with us. Thank you so much. Noli's posting link to your Twitter. People go catch up with Rabbit on Twitter, and would look forward to more publications. Thank you. All right, we are off to a rollicking start. Our next reader this evening is Tara Mandarano. She is a Best of the Net nominated writer and editor and an advocate for patients in the mental health and chronic illness communities. As well as the work featured in the anthology Big Stories About Life in Plus-Size Bodies, she has also been published in the Washington Post, the Huffington Post, The Week, Reader's Digest, Motherwell, and Today's Parent. Without further ado, Tara, you can take it away.
Thank you very much. My essay is called My Body's Civil War. Why aren't you wearing any pants? The question from my 5-year-old daughter catches me off guard. I look down at myself in confusion, taking in my beloved black leggings. Her outraged tone implies I'm running around in my underwear, but in reality, I'm just wearing something elasticized that feels comfortable against my swollen belly. What do you mean? I ask her, seeking clarification, but half afraid of what might come out of her mouth. They look like tights. There it is, one of my biggest insecurities, innocently vocalized by this pint-sized version of me. The worry that I am constantly being judged and scrutinized for the way that I look. I remember my mother always telling me what a good appetite I had, even as a child. As family lore goes, sometimes she would even save me the biggest pork chop when we had our extended family over for dinner, much to the consternation of my dad and uncle. Back then, I could basically eat whatever I wanted with no worries about my weight. Up until that point, I always had seconds as a matter of course. As an adolescent, I was a lean, mean, metabolizing machine. Then one summer, I suddenly developed seasonal allergies and couldn't fit into my shorts anymore. I remember being puzzled that I had to go up 2 sizes out of the blue. I had been used to being a perfect size 6 for quite some time, just like the Wakefield twins and the Sweet Valley High series I devoured as a teen. It wasn't until I was in my mid-20s that I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. I was living in Dublin, Ireland at the time, and one day I experienced excruciating pelvic pain while taking a shower. I immediately knew something serious was going on, and an ultrasound at the hospital revealed one of many ovarian cysts that I would be cursed with over the years. PCOS was actually an incidental finding. It meant that my hormones were wildly out of whack and that my ovaries were covered in tons of small fluid-filled follicles containing immature eggs that would not grow enough to trigger ovulation. At hearing this news, a lot of mysterious things began to make sense. PCOS also meant I had higher than normal male hormones, androgens coursing through my body. Now I understood why I had suffered from oily skin and persistent acne since the age of 11. Now I knew why I had hair growing in places that usually only old ladies complained about. My weight would always fluctuate over the next 10 years, but it didn't seem to be down to anything I did or didn't do. I ate the same, I didn't exercise much, I didn't change my pills. The only new thing in my life was the insidious presence of endometriosis. It had actually first invaded my body in that ominous cyst I felt twisting in the shower. But I underestimated the invisible effect of endo on my life. Whenever it flared up and tissue from my uterus grew in places it shouldn't, I put on weight. It was as if my whole body was inflamed, and it was. Struggling to fit into my usual clothes was always a sign that something wasn't right internally. I remember feeling so defeated going through those vicious hormonal cycles, having to buy bigger clothes to fit my ever-expanding tummy. At one point, the pain got so bad that my gynecologist decided to put me into fake menopause to shut down my reproductive system and give it a break before my next surgery. My period went AWOL for 6 months, and I love not being in discomfort every month, but I hated the fact that I ballooned into this big version of me again. Suddenly I was solid, plump. My face looked like a chipmunk's. I also had to deal with hot flashes and night sweats, but feeling fat was my main complaint. 6 months later, I had my surgery and my doctor proclaimed it a success. Within weeks, the pounds started falling off of their own accord since the meds had worn off. Snug pants were suddenly hanging from my waist. My face started to look more like itself. I basked in the glow when coworkers and friends exclaimed, "You look so good," because I knew that was code for "Congratulations, you look so much better now that you've lost a few pounds. Now tell us how you managed to do it so quickly. What are your secrets?" I had moved home to Canada after 7 wonderful years in Dublin and had met my soulmate while working at a romance novel company. A couple of years into our relationship, we started trying for a baby. I was 35 and it was a high priority for me. Because of my background with PCOS and endometriosis, I wasn't even convinced I could have kids. When nothing happened after a few months, I was referred to a fertility specialist. She immediately put me on metformin, a diabetic drug that also helps women with PCOS lose weight and ovulate. I took it without question, even though I wasn't really carrying around any extra pounds. I also decided to see a naturopath during this time to even out Western and Eastern medicine. And I also started 6 weeks of acupuncture. Between going off the pill, starting metformin, and committing to this holistic protocol, I unexpectedly lost 10 pounds. It was the thinnest I'd been in a long time, and I was thrilled. My collarbone was so prominent. It didn't look as if I had an ounce of fat. Once again, everybody in my social circle commented on my new body, but they never came right out and said anything explicit about my weight. Psychologically, it felt like I was being covered in a warm, fuzzy blanket of compliments. People told me how nice I looked in outfits that had never elicited any form of praise before. I didn't care. I felt more accepted, more approved of, the less of me there was. A month after my daughter was born, I lost myself in the throes of postpartum depression and anxiety. I felt shell-shocked and overwhelmed in my new reality. I wasn't sleeping, I was in pain, and I absolutely hated breastfeeding. I had low milk supply and I was barely coping or peeing. Something strange was also happening with my body. The weight was melting off. Somehow I lost 35 pregnancy pounds in a mere month. I wasn't trying, but I was rewarded with positive reinforcement at every turn anyway, as if I had achieved a massive accomplishment. I even remember my sister pulling up my sweater in the dead of winter to look at my suddenly flat belly. She was unbelieving. Everyone kept saying how good I looked after just having a baby. It didn't mean much to me at the time because I was navigating such a maze of emotional misery. But of course, there was a small, dark part of me that cheered even as I physically disappeared. I have no idea why I lost the weight so quickly, but it was probably because I wasn't taking care of myself properly. I was barely eating. My main priority was trying to feed my daughter, even though my breasts weren't cooperating. And I wasn't peeing because I was severely dehydrated and not drinking enough water. But at least my pre-pregnancy genes fit again. These days, I swing between trying to be more body positive and still loathing the way I look. I post a lot of selfies to social media, mainly of my face, because I'm seeking approval that people still find me attractive, even if my appearance has transformed. It's difficult to dress your body when you suffer from a chronic illness that causes bloating. I'm always careful not to draw attention to my tummy or endo belly. If I'm honest, I really just want to hide my body. There are some days when I just want to be invisible so I don't have to encounter myself in the mirror. But I know that's not psychologically healthy. And so I am determined to begin a journey to accept my body more. I'm just emotionally tired of constantly fighting and losing a civil war. And what for? My body may not be what it once was or at its prime, but I'm still here on this earth, breathing and living and writing. Despite all my raging, my body is still keeping me alive. I try to remember this when I'm in pain or frustrated with how things don't fit. Now, instead of rating a 3 out of 10 on a scale of how much I love my body, I just focus on what parts are working right. A number doesn't have to define me. Being congratulated on being pregnant when I wasn't can just be a bad memory. Instead, I try to focus on what makes me feel valued and worthy. I love my hair, my eyes, and my freckles, and the fact that they cover nearly all of me. I'm also proud of my mind and my creativity. Over the last 41 years, my body has been through thick and thin with me, and I'm making a real effort not to criticize it so much, both mentally and verbally. After all, I have my 5-year-old daughter standing by, constantly watching me, and I want her to accept herself in her entirety and not feel that she just has to be pretty. It's something I'm still figuring out and learning how to do, but it's all part of my healing. Thank you.
Tara, thank you so much. This personal essays, I think, are a different thing than often, some of the things that we do on here. And I guess the first thing that I would say is, and I mean this very honestly, is thank you for your vulnerability and honesty in telling us these things. I don't generally just share my own experience immediately, but I do have some level of experience with. I had a period in my life where I lost a tremendous amount of weight, and it was because my mother had died, and I was grieving, and I just stopped eating. And I would sort of go places, and I was sort of still I was me, but I was anxious and I was fumbling, and I felt even weirder because I thought I looked different or I looked strange in some way. And people would comment, and everything everyone always says, like, "Oh my God, you look amazing." And I was like, "Do you not see the like weird dark circles under my eyes? Because I haven't slept in 4 days and like all this other stuff." And this conflation of I guess, for lack of a better word, like mass with health or with success and happiness and all this stuff is really, when you look at it as simply or as honestly as you put it in your essay, it really reveals how thoughtless and silly it is, because we don't know what's going on with people. We don't know why someone is experiencing this. We don't know the pain that they're going through currently. We don't know, anything really. And also, even if say a person is, very intentionally, doing whatever they want to do to get to be the way that they want to look, even then it's probably not really cool for everyone to just comment on it as soon as they see you. As far as everything else that you mentioned, I just really, again, like the thing that strikes me so much is honesty, about feeling conflicted about motherhood, about feeling conflicted about health and well-being. But, I love the sheer practicality of where you landed of, for today, I am alive. I'm not thinking about it. My heart is beating right now. I can move around in the world and interact with things to some extent, and maybe keeping that instead of I just love the idea of keeping that in the forefront instead of some sort of like you know X number out of 10 satisfaction scale. So thank you. That really it meant a lot that you shared that with us. So thank you very much. All right, this is wow. So I've spent the week dealing with the frustration of wood not behaving the way that I would like it to. So to get into this emotional and connectivity and like all of this sort of this world of really relating to other people is absolutely wonderful, but slightly disorienting. So that's why I may occasionally just stare up at the wall and take a second. I appreciate your understanding. So continuing on, our next reader is Cate Root. She is a writer in New Orleans. For 5 years pre-pandemic, she co-hosted the fabulous Dogfish reading series. She serves as the poet at large for Current Affairs, and her work has also appeared or is forthcoming in Catapult, River, Entropy, Infection House, and Tilted House. Cate, you should be able to unmute, and you can take us away.
Okay, hi everyone. It's really amazing to hear other people's stories. Just a little bit about me, Tara. I definitely, I also was diagnosed with PCOS at a young age, and that was, especially like having the experience of a doctor, just be like, well, if I could do anything, I would just wave a magic wand and take 50 pounds off of you right now. It's like, that's a thing to say to a 17-year-old. So. I want to say, if you'll bear with me, that this essay that I'm about to read is from a different person, basically. I'm 37 now. You'll hear me say that I'm 28 in the segment that I read. So I'm going to watch my time, and if I have time, I have a couple of very, very short poems that are also about bodies that I could read right after this short excerpt, just to kind of feel like a whole self and not trap myself in who I was 9 years ago. To all of these people, I'm so glad to be spending this time with. So this piece is about me and my own body image, being a person who in my adult life has kind of ranged from 215 to 330-ish pounds. And then also I was in a relationship for 5 years with a man who weighed around 450 to 500 pounds, and how your partner reflects you and you reflect your partner in your own sense and all of that. But mostly I'm going to stay focused on me tonight because that's how I'm feeling. The essay is called Loving the Bigger Fat. I'm stuck in traffic trying to keep my patience. I look at my hands. My boyfriend Alex calls them doll hands. I don't understand what that means though. My veins glow greenish against pink and white skin, which is otherwise marked by freckles and cat scratches. My nails are clipped short, unpainted, usually a little dirty. I think of a doll hand, consistently colored, polished, its fingers splayed only for definition, never to grasp or touch. Bored, I imagine how I must look to passing drivers. I see myself with a scarf on my head, fabulous vintage clothes, big sunglasses, driving a shiny boat of a car. I'm Janet Leigh from Psycho. Then, of course, I realize that I'm not. The interior of my decade-old Chevy was already stained and cigarette burnt when I bought it. The exterior has a few dents and scratches and is always liberally dusted with pollen, leaves, burrs, dead flowers, and bird shit. And well, I'm me. I'm plain and tall. I wear glasses. I'm fat and redheaded. When I wake up in the morning, I look through a tossed over room for the cleanest shirt to wear with my black pants. I skip makeup. I skip glamour. And yet in my mind's eye, I'm glamorous. Lee is just an avatar, and an infrequent one at that. Most of the minor actors I cast to play Cate Root in my head are at least based on some version of me. Green eyes, red hair, curls, and curves. But they're all standing, waiting for the true me to emerge. Someday, I tell myself, someday I will be the right weight. Someday when I'm closer to 200 pounds than 300, I'll just cast myself. I feel like I've already been so many people. There's me, 9 years old in a B-cut bra and taller than most of the boys in my class. Me at 13, fidgeting in a swimsuit, already self-conscious about stretch marks, a red web that quickly formed between my pale breasts and freckled shoulders. Me at 15, shrouded in an oversized flannel shirt. Me at 17, trying on a new personality in New York City, hoping all the black would be slimming. Me at 25, feeling graceful and lithe at 215 pounds, slipping on a pair of size 14 jeans and partying on a French Quarter balcony until dawn. Me now, 28, and noticing every backache, every exacerbated hangover, every extra second it takes to push myself out of a low chair. Those younger girls all feel lost to me now. I wonder, is it my fault? Was I supposed to take hold of them and keep them closer to me? Why can't I remember when I first got fat? Why can't I figure out what I looked like, really looked like at any point in time? Why do old pictures always surprise me? My family is big on pictures, but not their organizational trappings, photo albums, scrapbooks, anything tangible that can tell you a story about the past. We have photographs, but they're stuffed in drawers and set between pages of novels. Some are even put into frames, but usually there are a handful of photos behind the one you can see. My parents have been married for 35 years, and their wedding photos consist of a bunch of blurry Polaroids stuffed in a paper bag. When I was in high school, I remember finding an old photo that shocked me. In it, I was probably 7 or 8 years old. I wore denim play clothes and rode a carousel. My arms were stretched above my head, and I grinned at the camera. Looking at it, I recognized the exuberance, but not the girl. That photograph made me question my entire history, the underlying assumption that I always was, am, and will be fat. Because the girl in that photo is exactly height-weight proportional. She's practically skinny. Most of my family battles with weight, but few are actually fat. Mostly we're big. The women around 5'7", the men around 6 feet. The women are what fashion magazines call pear-shaped, holding all their weight around their hips and bellies, swollen like upright eggs. The men are large but rarely hulking. Their struggles come in beer bellies and double chins. Over the years, my mother, father, sister, brother, aunts, uncles, and grandmothers waxed and waned in their sizes. I remember their faces growing pudgier or thinner, and that my hugging arms couldn't always reach around someone's midsection. I have no memories of what made people get fat, giant bowls of cheese dip or faces smeared with chocolate cake. Life alone seems to be fattening. Ice cream in the summer, beers on the porch, cheese and crackers on the kitchen counter while mom and dad made dinner. What made people thin? Running 10 miles a day. A diet of chicken and green vegetables with twice-a-day workouts. Mixing canned tuna with mustard and eating it off a Wassa cracker. You would think that this family history would foster commiseration and compassion. In reality, I resented the hell out of all of them. My mother's fat was a size 14, my thin. My father's struggle with weight, as far as I could tell, seemed to consist of a pudgy 8th grade year before he became a runner. My brother and sister have been overweight, pudgy, a little thick at times. But no one in my immediate family has been fat the way I was fat. Fat like 330 pounds, fat like you can't reach to clean yourself properly in the shower, like you're winded going up one flight of stairs, like you have to eye one piece of furniture suspiciously, standing for hours at social occasions to avoid the humiliation of breaking a cheap chair. Fat like your joints hurt at the end of the day, every day. Fat like you feel like you're always standing in the way. Fat like you feel like you just take up too much space in the world. So fat that you'll always be that. That you convince yourself there's no other way unless God or magic is involved. And these are just a couple, very quick, maybe one poem. This is called I Keep Clothes for Any Body That Shows Up. Remember the creased red lines on my waist, punishment from my genes, even as I wanted to blame fat aunts, wanted to blame red hair, wanted to squeegee all this extra white dimply skin, wanted to wipe clean, but clean. Who could ever feel that in a body? I get out of the shower and wonder when the wetness between my legs changes from clean to dirty, as in, if it comes from inside me, it is dirty, as a girl would figure. The things inside us, rank and unspeakable, except I found a magic years ago. Yes, I can tell you what it is if you're ready. Nothing is unspeakable. I keep clothes for any body that shows up. I let her be. Sometimes when I get out of the shower, I stand in front of a fan with my legs open. Is air clean or dirty? Now you see, the whole thing makes no sense. The language. You have to change the language. Keep lots of style on hand. Okay, that's it so much. Thank you guys so much for listening. This has been such a wonderful way for me to spend my Friday.
Thank you, Cate. Yeah, that was this has been a wonderful way for all of us to spend a Friday night, I think. I got so much out of what you read. I think the thing about the thing that you really highlighted that maybe I hadn't considered before is the ways in which people who are, to begin with, concerned about their body, let's put it that way, to be people who have been trained, whether by family or society or whatever, to pay more attention to their physical selves, have this catalog of previous selves of this is when it was better, this is when it was worse, this is when it was better, this is when and there's almost this sort of desperate sense that of all of these possible selves, one day we'll get the good one, because the unifying theory with all of the selves, to some extent, at least in my mind, is that they were all in some way flawed. They were all in some way not acceptable, and I just think you really nailed that. And yeah, photos are a trip, and comparisons within families are. I love that you pointed out that rather than these things that people have in common, bringing them together, they tend to make them even further apart and more isolated and lonely. I think that's just such a jumping back to what I said at the beginning of the show, if our goal is to behave and think and try to act in ways that connect and help others, remembering that assumption that when we are feeling self-conscious or displeased or upset with ourselves, we tend to retreat from everyone else, and they are feeling the same way. That's a really good thing to sort of check in with whenever possible. So thank you. That was really wonderful. All right. We are going to close things out now with the final reader tonight, Christina Myers, who you heard from before, but here's a little bit about Christina. She is a former community journalist turned freelance writer and editor. She's the creator and the editor of the book Big, Stories About Life in Plus-Size Bodies, available 2020 from Caitlin Press. I heard about a year ago. So happy book-aversary? Is that a word? We'll go with it. And also her debut novel, The List of Last Chances, will be out in April 2021. She is a fan of red lipstick and pretty dresses with big skirts and deep pockets. She juggles creative work and stay-at-home parenthood from her home outside Vancouver, Canada. So Caitlin, you can close us out.
Okay, did I unmute properly? Everybody can hear me? Okay, I just have to say before I read a little bit, I have to say this is one of the most supportive and loving and amazing chats I've ever seen. I've gone to a lot of Zooms and they're all supportive. You know, writers are wonderful people and they're so good to each other. And readers are good people and they're good to each other. But this is just such a lovely chat, and it's so lovely to see it and to see familiar faces and new faces. So yeah, so I'll close it out. I thought what I would actually do, because we've had 3 readings that I think were quite emotional and I mean heavy in the best way, in the way that they sort of affect us deeply. And so I thought what I would do, because there's so many stories in here, I thought I would just quickly read 4 or 5 sort of single paragraphs from 4 or 5 of them. Anybody who's sort of been to a few of these is probably tired of hearing me read my own. I do have one story in here, which is a list of tips for the Fat Girl's Guide to Eating and Drinking, which is what sort of started this project originally. And you can find it in here. But I thought, because there's so many contributors and they can't all be here, I wanted to share a little bit from them. So if that's okay with you guys, I'll read a few of those. And I guess then if there's questions that come up in the chat or anything like that, we can do that. So again, these will be little snippets, just little sort of paragraphs. This is from a story called Easy Out by Simone Blay, who actually one of the few people in the book that I knew before this book. Her and I were both community journalists in the same chain, and then contributed to this. So these will be little snippets. I won't preface them to explain anything. They'll just give you little nuggets of the variety and diversity of stories that are in here. From the sideline, my coach gave me a knowing look. That's when I spotted him, the right fielder playing close to the infield, betting the fat girl at the plate would lightly tap a high fly ball. Given how often we played this team, they should know me by now, respect my skills, not treat me as an easy out. You got this, my coach said with a nod. I grinned, digging into the batter's box as doubt slipped away. That's right, I thought, as I swooped the bat around with 2 slow practice swings. It'll go far because I'm fat. So that's a little nugget from that one. This paragraph is from a story called Barbara Streisand or Bust. It is, the writer's name is Dr. Rohini Banerjee, a doctor at a university here in Canada, in the Maritimes here. I remember my parents admiring how sturdy I was, in sharp contrast to photos I saw of them from their childhood growing up in post-partition India. Skinniness for my South Asian parents meant not enough. And part of their mission to move to Canada in the late 1960s was to make sure their children never had to grow up like them. The plump, round, medium-skinned daughter was their ideal baby. There was an innocence in how my thick body looked and felt when I ran to them for a hug. I was snuggly and warm, and to them, I was the proof that they had succeeded as immigrant parents in Canada. This next one is a small little section from a story called Reflections by Sally Kwan. Sally is a writer, photographer, poet, sort of a little bit of everything, and this is a lovely piece. Do you know what it's like to go to a restaurant and be shown to a booth you don't fit into? Do you know what it's like to have someone offer you dessert, and when you refuse, hear them say, "Oh, are you on a diet?" Or have everyone at a party watch you to see what you put on your plate? Do you know what it's like to live in a lake town and go to the beach at 6 in the morning because there isn't anyone else there at that time? Booths and bathing suits are not the only thing I don't fit into. Clothing, cars, and oh my God, public washroom stalls. Amusement parks are out of the question, and I have to lose at least 25 pounds if I want to try ziplining. Parking spaces, that's one you probably wouldn't have thought of. Life jackets. Absolutely anything that says one size fits all. Of course, even when I was normal size, I'd toss those. Underwear, I eventually just stopped wearing it. But the thing that rankles me more than anything else, it's not other women with perfect bodies. No, it's men who think they're being cute when they say, I can't, I have to watch my girlish figure. This is the opening paragraph from a story by a writer named Tracy Manroll. And the title of the story is Learning to Live Large. I was assigned female at birth, and despite it never feeling right, I largely lived that assignment for 48 years. I was a daughter, sister, granddaughter, niece, lesbian, wife, and mama, most sweetly a mama. In my 49th year, I began the process of change. By my 52nd birthday, I was socially, hormonally, and legally male, a soft, queer, non-binary, trans-masculine human deeply connected to women, to women's issues, and to my feminist outlook on the world, with a beard. I have lived my life in 2 genders, and in both of them, fat. And that piece goes on to explore the difference of being a man in one kind of body and a woman in one kind of a body. Different but related experiences. Am I doing okay for time to read 2 more? Is that, we're okay? All right, this is a piece called 5FB by Cassie Stocks. Cassie Stocks is a Canadian writer, novelist, librarian in the prairies. And 5FB refers to a fashion line that she jokingly refers to that she's going to create. And this is sort of a humorous piece, although in so many times when it's a humorous piece, it's sort of speaking to other things that are not really humorous deep down. At the end of all the runway galleries, there's always a final photo of the designer coming out to take a bow. A designer often 3 times the size of the largest range their clothing comes in. What's that about? You design clothing you could never wear? Oh, I detest them. Of course, they just have the workers whip them up custom outfits, leaving all the other larger ladies, even those with possible purchasing means, weeping in their overflowing linen closets, or sumptuous walk-in closets, as the case may be. I allow myself transitory fantasies of a fashion designer kidnapping, transporting him in the backseat of my car, arms and legs tied with silken ribbons, black satin bag over his head, so as not to chafe. Once he is released to the chair in front of my sewing machine, I'd allow the cat to climb on him and flap pages of a swanky clothing magazine in his face. Sew me this, asshole, in my size, and it better look good. Okay, and I'll just do one more quickly and then we'll close. This is a story called Sasquatch by a writer named Cate Weicker. If you ever tell anyone about this, I'll deny it, he growls into my ear. The smell of Old Spice and Dippity-Doo hair gel overpowers me as he pounces, crushing me into the couch, splaying my fat like an insignificant bug on a windshield. I feel out of control. I'm not sure which is worse now, fat or small. I push him away. He scoffs and mutters, frigid horror. I instantly regret rejecting him, but the damage is done. My role has been cast, forever the fat friend. So I lose. I lose him, I lose control, my identity, my personality. I lose weight, starve myself, and struggle to morph into something, anything, other than the girl who is so uncomfortable in her own skin that she would push away a boy she's been lusting after for 6 months, out of fear he might notice her back rolls. People comment. They comment on how great I look. They praise the rapidly downward plunge on the scale. They affirm what I've always suspected, that thin is beautiful. And to close, a last little bit from the foreword to the book that I wrote. I hope this book, and I hope the conversation tonight and the readings that you heard tonight, if you don't get a chance to read the book, but I hope this book makes you ask questions about the way you think and talk about your own body and other people's bodies, and about the world we live in and the lessons and obsessions, about the words we use and how they shape us. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's all I have for my end.
All right. Thank you so much, Christina, really, for, not only putting the anthology together, but coming here and bringing what I'm going to refer to as part of your crew. There's 26 members of the crew, but the ones we got to hear from tonight were so wonderful. And I think, just taking a paragraph from several different stories there, you really got, all of us got a chance to sort of see the variety of experience described in the book. And I think that's the coolest thing, honestly, and I think exploring humor and exploring true pain and exploring gender issues and exploring all of these things as regards body image and I don't want to call it body image in a sense. I've always said something, and it's really funny because the people that I meet in life, sometimes you can tell someone has never had to think about things a lot. I don't know if you guys know what I mean, but sometimes I'll say it's hard having a body. and people will just stare at me. And I'm like, oh, you've never had to think about these things. So, you know, this variety of perspectives and experiences like really sounds honestly like a valuable resource. So as you mentioned, you know, the chat is a wonderful place for discussion. I usually mention that earlier on. Tonight I just didn't. I apologize, but I will say that after the show, we keep the Zoom open for an hour or so at least. So if people want to hang out, ask the readers questions, ask Christina questions, find out more about the book, please just stick around. If not, then I believe Noli's posting some information or has posted information in the chat about where to get the book. So with that, that has been our show for this week. I will let you all know the following information. If you would like to keep up with the show, you can do so on Twitter at TGIcast, or you can go to tgicast.com to find out who's coming up on the show and just more general information. If you'd like to follow myself on the Twitter, I am at Rich Cresswell. If you'd like to follow the show's creator, founder, curly-haired spiritual pillar Trina Thibodeau. She's on Twitter at Trina Tibbs, TRENATHIBS. And if you have someone you think might be a good fit for the show, if there's someone you'd like to hear, if you have ideas for us, if you have suggestions, referrals, etc., you can talk to our show's scheduling maven. And I refer to her as the Executive Vice President of Talent Relations, Noli Reed, who is on Twitter at Noli Reed, where you can also email her, I believe, at her name, at Gmail. Yes. With that, thank you all so much for being here. Really, you know, like I said at the beginning of the show, this is the goal here is to connect. And I really feel like tonight was successful in that regard. You know, it usually is. Sometimes I would say I'm either connected or baffled occasionally. Tonight I'm connected for sure. And I'm rarely baffled. And yes, as Christina mentioned, if you'd like to find or suggest to people that they find the most supportive environment for creative people on a Friday night on Zoom, I'd like to think we are it. So please come back. We're here every week at the same time, and hope to see you all soon. Thank you.